Hey, James Cotton, how are you?
Yeah, very good and good to speak to you guys. It's been a while.
Absolutely, and it's second time on as well. So welcome back to the podcast, James. And as always, my trusty sidekick Ross. How are you, Ross, this morning?
Right. I'm not your trusted sidekick. Co-host Russell is here, thank you. And I'm sure this is going to be a good one because I'm better than the first one anyway, because I wasn't on the first one. So this one will be much improved.
Absolutely. So probably the
Morning,
best place
James.
to start, James, because it's been a while, and obviously you're now in foreign lands, so people might not see as much of your stuff on social these days. Do you want to just give a quick run through what you're doing now and a brief background?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, obviously I've been in the fitness industry for quite a considerable time, over 20 years now. Gone very, very quick, to be honest, to this point. But I'm actually CEO of a company called Xtreme Fitness or Extreme Brands. We have two different brands. Extreme Fitness is the fitness provision, and we have Extreme Kids. We do. I've been over here in Poland. I live in Poland, just outside of Krakow. I've been here now for coming up to 2 years as the CEO.
Wow, that's
Uh,
flown.
and then previously I was a consultant with them for about 18 months leading up to taking over that role. But yeah, honestly, what can I say? It's an industry that I love and I really wanted to test myself outside of the UK and this opportunity come up, which was, it was a great opportunity for myself. Um, We'll talk about the business in a second. You guys will love to hear about it, I'm sure, and
Absolutely.
we've got some really, really nice growth going. So we'll talk about it in a second.
Also, well, let's get straight onto that. I think it's a really because you've got a big background in obviously fitness, but also in franchising, and so you've got a whole load of experience. And the funny thing is with franchising, it's not just fitness because you were doing work in general franchising as well for a while. So I think that's what we were talking about last time you were on. So yeah, you've got that whole business spectrum, which is really interesting. But let's jump into the extreme fitness because it's obviously it's a brand that from what you've been saying, and I've seen online, is growing exponentially
Yeah.
out in Poland. And I guess what is the story behind that in terms of why do you feel it's growing so fast? What are you guys doing right? It's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, of course. So Extreme Fitness, first of all, is a traditional gym format. Started in Poland about 13 years ago. Two owners, Lucas Dojka and Lucas Nowakowski, original founders. And they launched the business in Poland, very similar to UK format. Both those individuals actually worked in the UK fitness industry.
Oh wow, okay.
Well, one did with the main brands, worked in the finance and restaurant industry. So they've got really good operational experience and understand what the UK market's like. So it's not just about me here. But Extreme, my involvement with Extreme started about 3.5 years ago, very much through a consultancy approach. And then really from there, what we worked on was how do we create value into Extreme and how do we grow it to the point of other market leaders, of course, Anytime Fitness, which I was part of launching in the UK, and obviously the other examples that exist out there. But Extreme for us, we've been on a 3-year roadmap or plan that we devised on getting the business to be able to scale. So we do that through franchising. So we acquire franchisees. We work those franchisees to get them into business, of course, and those franchisees to be profitable. But the only difference here, compared to, let's say, the UK market, is the speed that we can do it, which is
Right, okay.
really, really, really interesting. The speed here is very, very quick. And I'll touch on that in a minute. I'm sure she'll have some questions about that. We're a network now, just over 158 clubs. We're opening or will be opening in a club every 3 days in Poland.
That's
Um,
just crazy.
and we will go into Czech Republic, that's second part of this year, where we're looking to open probably 5 to 10 units over the next 12 months. So we will be multi countries, but our expectation would be 100 plus locations in 2026. And we had some record numbers in 2025 as well. We advertise and promote what we open and sell. So you'll see that on our website or my LinkedIn page. You're
Yeah.
welcome to have a look at.
James, can you take a step back and maybe, well, I guess for our benefit, and also I think a lot of people watching, what's the core concept then with Extreme? Because I mean that is in incredible growth. I
Yeah.
mean, if you know that's yeah. So what? But in a nutshell, what is the product? What's
Yeah, so in the nutshell, it's a traditional gym format, but it's a full
mm,
service in respect of we have receptionists, we have open and close hours. We initially focused on smaller markets, and then there's been a huge infrastructure expansion in Europe. So especially around roads, and with that have come retail parks. So we've
mm,
um, managed to connect with retailers, property developers, and with that, we're pretty much in every single retail part that you can think of in Poland. And that gives us a real opportunity because we're ground floor, as you know, that's hard to get in the UK. And then from there, we're an anchor tenant. But going back to your question, sorry, Russell, back to your question, traditional gym format, which would be CV area, free weights, a fixed resistance, studios. We have a little bit of a wellness area as well in some clubs. We partnership with High Rocks, so we have some High Rock centres that
Okay.
we're starting to roll out as well.
brilliant.
But probably what you would see in our clubs that you might not see, then we are heavier. There's more weights, there's more free weights, there's more options around that. So there is this market, there is a tradition to around weightlifting,
Mm,
that's culturally as well. So what you would find is that we get really high usage. People do not pay memberships here and don't go. You don't get sleepers in this market. It doesn't really exist. Partly because people are very price conscious,
Yeah.
they use what they pay for, ultimately, and that's good. Our membership model, actually, it's not contract or anything like that. It'll be equivalent of around £30 a month in the UK. It would be, but we charge about 140, 150 zlotys per membership as an average membership, so that's the equivalent. And we pay on a month-to-month basis. We have some partners that we work with, ABC Fitness being one, help us with our membership systems. Um, and we've built a really nice infrastructure, and I'll put my hands up and say, well, where I've learned that, I've learned that in the UK, UK driven in respect of my background, and that, of course, is with some of the operators I worked with in the past, but also knowing that what the pitfalls could be as you start to
mm.
grow a business. I've had the opportunity of seeing what works, what doesn't work, and obviously the bad and the ugly of that in franchising with lots of different businesses over the years. But it's really exciting times. I'll go into it a bit more detail. I'm sure you've got more questions.
Yeah, no, it's quite. It's also just picking up on the part that I really liked there was the fact of that you've got people welcoming them. Sounds like that you've still got that personal touch on the clubs as you go in, and it's really nice to hear that the market leader and someone who's growing at that level is still sort of grounded
Yeah.
in the service part as opposed to just just come in,
Yeah,
put your
that's
code in, and then you come. That's good to hear.
yeah, that's a good question. Made a conscious decision of doing a couple of streams in our business, and one of it was about 2 years ago, is to make sure that we have a member experience manager across the company. So that person focuses on purely what does that first 90 days look like?
Brilliant.
What's our touch points? And how does that translate to franchisees? We own corporate clubs and franchise clubs, of course. But there's a different approach sometimes in how you'd manage that. Some of it's educational coaching, some of it is driving outcomes based on enough touch points. Of course, that's not
Great.
just physical, as in what I mean, physical people to people conversations. We need technology to be able to uh, speak to
Definitely.
our speak to our members. It's still an area that we are investing quite heavily in, and will be over the next 12 months. Next 12 to 24 months. One of our funders who work with us, B Valley, is a fund in Poland, are working with us in relation to that member experience as well.
No,
No, I
I
think
mean,
that's
Ryan, I'm
sorry.
sure you've got take on that because we talk about this about a lot. We post about this a lot. We're in meetings this week touching on this, and I guess this is also leading on to. And Ryan, I won't move on without letting you talk about the service led, but the growth in England and the concern that we really have is losing the service and certainly losing the service at the affordability end of the market. So yes, the fact that the main player over there, the biggest growth of clubs in the country and moving into different markets is actively driving that. And, really pricked my ears when you're talking about the first 90 days and the touch points that you have with members because that seems to be getting lost in the need for growth and for volume over here. So I
Yeah.
think that'd be a very, very good point to sort of talk about the different markets. But sorry, Ryan, go on. What were you going to
Oh no,
say?
I was going to say exactly what you just said there. In the UK at the minute, unfortunately, because what's happening is staff levels are dropping, so receptions
Mm,
are going, and gym staff being replaced with freelance PTs and stuff. That onboarding is almost non-existent in a lot of clubs, and then because of the rise of the budget chains, that never existed in those guys anyway, and so you suddenly finding the whole swathe of the industry is going away from what we are. And what I try and tell people is we work in hospitality first and foremost. We're a hospitality business, and so why aren't we almost, I'm not saying entertain, but people go in their spare
mm.
time. They're coming to, a lot of the clients don't just turn up to use the weights kit. They're coming up to enjoy themselves there. So why is there no interaction with staff? Why aren't we communicating with people?
Yeah.
Why don't we have an onboarding process? It's
Well,
just absolutely crazy to me. And then
yeah.
they moan that the retention's poor.
Well, I'll tell you something that's really interesting. So we have 30 corporate clubs as well as franchise clubs.
Yeah.
On average, our franchise clubs probably perform 5 to 8% better than our corporate clubs.
Do they?
So it kind of gives you an idea why is that sometimes, and ultimately comes down to accountability, driving service. The franchise model is slightly different here in respect of the franchisee involvement. Almost all of them are owner operators here.
Are they? Oh, okay, that
Okay,
big
so that
difference.
means their franchisee actively works in their business. Okay,
Yeah.
so it has a direct impact of the success of a unit. And if I question my past with Anytime Fitness, Energy Fitness, um, the mixture of having a franchisee, maybe as an investor type or owner operator, or somebody who's doing it as a partnership. Sometimes you need those focus points, but the numbers here are good. They really are good. They're comparable to the UK and above. But likewise, the financial savings here make it affordable for franchisees to scale the business. That's ultimately, if I do a comparison for you, a typical franchise unit in the UK probably costs circa 150,000, 170,000 liquid capability. Plus, you
Mm.
would have funding from a bank for the project cost, and you'd have funding from lease finance. So you had three ways of blending the finance. In Poland or in Europe, this is not just Poland, it's very common that the franchisee would commit equivalent to £100,000. Um, and that's the upper end. The landlord would fit out the unit.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So the landlord would commit to fitting out the unit. And from that aspect, we would then only need one source of finance or second source of finance, which would be lease financing in relation to the equipment. So what you have is a lower barrier to entry to be able to actually get into business, and it makes it very favorable. So from a franchisee's perspective, you don't have to service the debt to the level that you are in the
Yeah.
UK. You know, the debt servicing multiple in the UK was at least two times the debt value. In Poland, you know, you don't have that risk because you're paying the fit out technically through your rent, which is euros per square meter. In the UK is obviously pounds per square foot.
But I
So
guess that also puts the landlord in the project as well, so they've got a bit of
Mm.
ownership. Because
yeah,
a lot of the time, the
well,
landlords over here are almost dismissive. They
yeah,
just whatever, and it's really
yeah,
hard to work with them. They're not really interested. I mean, landlords are a nightmare and you both of you will know this, or they can be. And I guess if you've got a landlord who's fitted out, the last thing they want is it to fail because they've spent
yeah,
all that
yeah,
money,
yeah,
regardless of whether they're getting it back through the rent or whatever.
yeah.
The last thing they need is the project to fail,
Yeah.
and suddenly,
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You know, maybe there was, no, maybe in the UK because space is a premium. Yeah, ultimately there
yeah,
isn't. It's hard to find, as you know, but there is space there. Ultimately, there is space there. It's about to structure the deal in the right way to benefit the tenant and benefit the landlord long term. And that's really what we're looking at is a long term. Our franchisees commit to us to 10 years. It's the minimum period.
is
Okay,
that right?
so what we have is great commitment that we know that, and I guess to help that is, you know, what impact does the franchisor have? So franchisor can, you know, be supportive function, and supportive function is let the franchisee find the unit and open it themselves in the UK, right? And then
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to negotiate the deal perhaps through the franchisor. In Poland, it's different. You know, we look to take the head lease and we sublease.
Oh, okay.
So we control the growth of our business. So that means all the leases are with us, okay, and we sublease to the franchisee. Of course, you know, we want to do it in a way that no, we do that because the landlords are more willing to work with you to be able to give you a better deal, to be able to get the unit fitted out, to be able to open it at the right level because you have a
Well, you're
strength.
not seen as almost an independent, are you?
That's
Like in the UK,
correct.
although you're a franchise, you're
Correct.
almost an independent
Yeah,
business. Whereas if you guys are going in negotiating, we've got 150 clubs, and you negotiate with us, it's a whole
yeah,
different
yeah,
conversation, isn't it?
yeah. And you know, when I look back in my career, you know, in the early times of Anytime Fitness and likewise energy, you know, I've seen, you know, Anytime very much was we pull it onto the franchisee, and maybe from that side of things. You know, when I look at it now, sitting here, 20 years worth more experience, or 10 years more experience since I've been there. I look at it a slightly different way. Whilst we got scale in the UK, we did over, you know, some really good years there. I think it was 48 we done in 1 year in the UK,
Well,
something like that. To move with real speed and control, and when I say speed, it's planned, planned, well thought out, moving at the level that you need to be able to open these companies, having the resources to do that.
yeah.
Um, you know, I have a big head office here, about 120 people. I have a
Have you? Wow.
technical team. I have in that technical team, it's about 15 to 20 people, and they focus on projects of opening not just extreme kids, sorry, not just extreme fitness, but also extreme kids as well. So that really helps because we take the project management of it for the landlords. We take the weight off them whilst they pay for it for us. That makes sense?
Just out of interest, how's the market in Poland? Is it a mature market? Is it like Britain where it's quite mature and
Yeah, good
it's
question. Yeah, good question. So it's not as mature as the UK. Yeah, I would say that you know, our penetration's about 8 to 9%. Okay, but
oh
if you
wow,
look,
okay, so real
if
opportunity.
yeah, so if you look at, yeah, exactly, it's a real opportunity. You're right, Ryan. If you really look at it. So when I first got there, I'd done some comparisons to a number of leisure facilities open in Germany compared to a neighbouring country, number of leisure facilities opening in Europe typically, and the average was around about 9,000. when I was in Poland initially 2.5 years ago, we're sitting at about 4.5 to 5,000 units. So I can see there's loads of headroom
Yeah,
to be able to grow into. Yeah, there is some really, really good competition. I shouldn't say competition, but really good brands in Poland. We have a company called Benefit, Medicover, really, really good businesses. They have independent different types of brands. Um, one of the successes, obviously, it's because it's completely me. Of course, it isn't. There's a team there. The founders are spoken about Lucas Doig and Lucas Nowkowski. They very much took in the early days really understand to kind of work that model. Really, what I've helped to do is really put a different type of structure to be able to take that business and push and grow and get the
yeah.
infrastructure in place to be able to do that. Obviously learnt that over the years, as you guys know. So yeah, it's been really positive.
You've done things significantly different because this is the interesting point. So the
Yeah,
things you've been telling us, pardon me, the things you've been telling us, obviously you've taken experience from energy and anytime, but actually the model you're running now is completely different. What made you look at it and go, "Oh, we need to do things differently"? Because
yeah,
this ownership model and stuff like that is it's franchising, but it's vastly different to what we do in
yeah.
the UK. So, what made you go? Actually, if we do this differently, our growth can be exponential. Or was that sort of stuff already in place
But you know what?
culturally?
It's not massively different to franchise brands in the market. It really is depending on how much risk you want to take as a franchisor
Mm.
ultimately, yeah. That's what it comes down to. So you look at McDonald's, they do exactly what I've just told you. So I think, realistically, I think having a certain level of control makes more sense.
Absolutely.
It makes more sense. But likewise, there, as you know, is a lead up to a franchisee getting into business, and that typically in the UK was probably a year to 18 months, I think, in the end. For us, we can get franchisees if we have the right site, probably within six to 9 months. We can, so we can build quick. Um, what we must do is make sure they have the right experience, and we do that by ensuring we have a panel. We have a panel that first of all interviews
All
franchisee.
right.
Okay, we put a panel in place. It's one of the first things I've done when I got there is to make sure that franchisees can work. What we know who our franchisees are. One of the projects that I worked on was it's a franchise-centric project that I've learned. And I brought that into Poland is we are going to concentrate on the franchisee. Okay, so we have a project as ongoing and running. It's how do we prove our experience with our franchisees, franchisee first. Um, and what we've had in 2025, we've had 60% of our franchisees reinvest.
Wow. And that
Yeah,
says that just says everything, doesn't it? It's
yeah, yeah, we
because I
have.
think the one big thing with that I see from a lot of franchises, and I know me and Russ now we're working with the smaller franchisees to bring them forward, is it has your client is your franchisee. You
Yeah,
want them to be successful. So and that's exactly what you're doing. Where I think a lot of the franchises over the years that we've worked with, it's almost we've got your money, we've got your club opened. It's up to you to run it now. And you're still going, that's not the way because if these guys are highly successful, I mean, I don't know how you guys take the fee off them, but a lot of them work on revenue. So the more successful they are, the more revenue you're generating
yeah.
as a franchisor. So
Absolutely, yeah. Look, from a perspective of how we do our fees, Ryan, we're royalty driven. So it is a percentage of revenue we are, and we're royalty driven for a reason. That helps us. Absolutely helps us to ensure that we have the best interest in the franchisee. It is.
it's refreshing to hear. Is what I'll say, James, because like I say, I've dealt with a lot of franchises over the years, and it's not always it's always boggled my mind how the franchisee is not front and center of what you're trying to do. The better they are, the better trained they are, the better support they get from. I mean, the fact you've got 120 staff at head office is
Yeah,
phenomenal,
yeah,
because you know. that with 150 clubs, if all of them are successful, one, they're not going to close, so you've not got all the closures and all the damage that potentially causes the brand. But you've also got successful clubs that are driving revenue, which then allows you again keep the whole process going. It's just a nice cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, profitability is important, and we are almost 100% profitable, almost on all of them. Very, very close actually to that. Compared to the UK, we're seeing about 75% profitable, uh,
Yeah,
to 80%. And there was obviously some sites there that driving profitability was harder, and partly was driven by competition of budgets, as you know. Um, uh, Compared to the Polish market, whilst there was competition, absolutely, their market is underserved probably. So the risk is fairly limited. Of course, you have situations that's only natural. It is so, but driving the outcome of profitability for franchisees is a key metric. Of course, it is. End of the day, they don't get into business with you if they weren't going to make money. Ultimately, that's what we all have to do at the same time. So we shouldn't be afraid of saying that. And sometimes, their successes has to be our successes. We have to be franchise centric.
absolutely.
And what
In
generally
two,
is the background of the sorry, Ryan, the franchisees and the profile? You said they're owner operators. What's their background? Are they fitness people that are coming in? Because what sort of jumps to mind for me when we're talking about it? I mean, the difference sort of with the anytime market over here, versus the US market, and the model has worked extremely well clearly over there. But you go into those clubs, and a lot of times you'll meet the owner in the clubs, and they'll be very hands on. It'll be their bread and butter. It'll be their baby, as opposed to the UK. A lot of investors who maybe don't spend not just any time, but a lot of the franchise brands who come from non-fitness backgrounds and it's just a pure they open the clubs wherever they're looking at without the intention of actually spending much time within the club. So it's interesting that they're far more owner operated. That must have a well, almost 100% success. I don't want to put words into your mouth. Actually, in your mind, does that make a big difference then on the success of these clubs and
Yeah,
profitability?
yeah. Without a doubt, yes. So the question, the answer to that is yes. The background they come
Mm.
from are all different. We have some from services industry. We have some from Polish entrepreneurs from the UK. They've lived in the UK and come back. We have some UK franchisees as well. I have probably 15 UK
oh
franchisees
wow,
who've invested. I have who moved to Poland. And I have franchisees from the building industry. I have franchisees from some the fitness industry, marketing industry. Um, there's fairly an entrepreneurial spirit in Poland where it's not unusual for people to run businesses. Probably more so than actually in the UK per capita. From
yeah,
that perspective, um, there's a culture of being self-sufficient. People, Polish culture of working hard. It's absolutely true. It is. I find that um, franchisees work hard. I find my team definitely work hard. And they do that because they're looking to be successful. A huge part of that is their mindset as well. Mindset of franchisees. We talk about mindset in our business, whilst it seems to be the N word at the moment. We've really been talking about it for a number of years. Is what is the mindset of that franchisee? Well, how successful do they really want to be? Well, if you've got a problem in your business and you work in it, it's probably pretty much the right mindset, yeah. And I can't say that that always happened in the UK. Yeah, when I was when I was working there. But yeah, look, there's pros and cons to both markets. It's not, it's there's whilst there's operational discipline, good engagement, fairly local, it's fairly responsive, working in club, where we probably don't excel as well, where that UK does probably excel is probably more around branding, slightly, how we approach the market, more data-driven management. And we've partnered with companies like ABC Fitness to help us drive that data understanding a bit more. But it's a simple business, and sometimes we forget this is a simple business. You look after your customer.
Mm.
You do we sell memberships as revenue, so it's not that hard to not understand that, and you keep your place clean and tidy. You look after it in the right way. There's a really high pride standard here. I would beg to differ if you go into a club in Poland of any brand and try and find it dirty, is
Yeah.
very hard
Mm.
to do. Yeah.
That comes into their work ethic. I mean, you only have to
Yeah.
look at Britain now the fact that we're not in the EU and a lot of the Polish guys went back. You can see the difference.
Yeah.
And from working in hotels, we used to have a lot of Polish kids and stuff working with us, and you could see the massive difference between the Brits. And it sounds horrible, but it's absolutely true. You could see the difference in the work ethic between the Polish staff and the English staff, and it was noticeable. And that was and so if you've got a whole population that's like that, James, it's absolute dream, isn't it? It's you're not having to walk in and go right. We haven't done this. We haven't done it. It's literally walk in and the expectations have been delivered. Then you can move to the next stage, can't you? You know what I mean? If the basics are done just as it just gets done,
Yeah.
you can do
I,
so much more.
yeah, I would say the opportunity in Central and Eastern Europe, so C and E countries, there's a huge opportunity there. It's probably the number one opportunity that I actually see for an expansion of any business in Europe. Because whilst the market's underutilized, I see that I've seen the data, and it's it is underutilized reality. Franchising is still fairly new. Um, but it's not new in the concept of understanding franchising, but in the aspect of growing a fitness provision like us, or our extreme kids provision like us. That will be new to the market. Having an opportunity to do that, then having an infrastructure with really good team and knowledge where the franchisor's in it with you, is rare. And you've got landlords that are willing to help, willing to do fit outs. Yes, you still have to have his skin in the game and have £100,000 equivalent, 500,000 zlotys or 450,000 zlotys equivalent. So you have to have skin in the game. But the return on investments I've been seeing are quick. We're seeing return on investments 2.5 to 3 years. In some cases, I've seen 2 years, and we know
Wow.
UK's 5 years.
Well,
Yeah,
usually
Mm.
most clubs in the UK, it's once the kit finance drops off, you start making a profit, do you?
yeah. Which will be like year six. Yeah, year six, year seven in the UK. So you're getting your return on investment in a really reasonable time, and that's why we're getting reinvestment as well. Because it's a good business.
Mm.
From a perfect storm, I call it a perfect storm sometimes when I'm here. I don't know if I'm extremely lucky I'm
Good at
or
your
it's
job.
hard work. I would like to say it's hard work and a bit of extreme luck. Who knows? It's a bit of both. I know, but I shouldn't dismiss that. It's a lot of hard work from a lot of people. That's really driven, really driven the success so far. Because I still think I feel
Yeah,
still feel like we're loading as a company. I don't know if you understand that term. I feel like we're still loading. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
expect 2026 to be better than 2025, and I expect us to do 100 units plus in 2026.
That's
And
amazing. Just,
what's the kind of the ceiling then for the market? So I'm just going through my notes. So what you're 158 at the moment. Sounds like that might have changed by the time we've finished recording this. But what's the market ceiling just in Poland, and
Yeah,
then obviously moving over to to the Czech Republic, how many are you looking at from there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So look, our vision is 750 units across both brands that we have. Okay. Um, but realistically, you know, I think we'll deliver quite comfortably about 500 units in relation to Extreme. I believe we have a some an express concept that we're also going into the market with. And we will do at least 150 units of Extreme Kids. So, the market in relation to achieving that vision is there, and that's not including Czech Republic. Um, so, Czech Republic, it's not going to be the size of Poland. Demographics completely different. It is. Realistically, I think we can do 40 to 50, 60 units in that country. I think that's probably more realistic what we're
Still
looking
pretty good though.
at. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
still a good size franchise business if you were looking
yeah,
at it just as a
it
standalone.
is. Yeah, absolutely. So, and it won't be the only country that we're going into. So it'll be our first one. But we will be looking to move, as I said, in Central and Eastern Europe.
Yeah,
Um, I'm working, or sorry, I should not me. Working with some partners that will help us to develop further markets. And we'll at least want to do two countries addition. So Czech Republic this year, next year we'll decide on
who's
probably
next?
who's next. Yeah, we will.
Yeah, and the fit and the extreme kids. So is that a fitness concept for kids? What's
No, it's not. It's not.
what?
It's not primarily a fitness concept. Initially, it's like an activity park, soft play, adventure park. Probably a bit bigger than you would normally see. We have food and beverage there. We have a kind of parents area, or we have a studio in there as well, fitness studio. We have something called the X Lab, where you can go and do some crazy stuff, make stuff in there. And then we have birthday party rooms as well. So, it's a combination of different types of income. So one of it is just a regular visit when you bring your child along, parent wants something to do with them.
Yeah, chuck them in the soft
Uh,
play and have some peace. Yeah,
yeah, but we're going to be launching a family membership there soon. So working with some advisors from the UK actually who've been very successful in some brands such as David Lloyd and some other brands. And what we're trying to do is capture some of that experience um, and drive a family membership. So how
yeah.
I really see it is we want to get the family exercising together very early on. We do. And I think it's really important because if we can get that to work in Extreme Kids, as well as the fun parts, soft play birthday parties, X
Yeah,
Lab, and all these different little zones and colors. If we can get the exercise and the parent and child exercising together in a very early stage, yeah, I think the core age will probably anything from about honestly, from about 3 to 13, we've got a 10-year period there where we're going to start delivering different types of offerings to them, which would be similar to maybe what's been delivered as a family membership in some of the family centres in the UK. I think that's uh, really key for our success. A lot of our a lot of our units as well and kids are next to Extreme Fitness, so that same
I was going
landlord,
to ask that question.
yeah, on retail parks is we take best part of if I say square feet, best part probably a smaller unit's about 5,000, but we're normally around 7 to 8,000 square feet 500 square meters,
Yeah,
600 square meters in fitness, and then kids is 750 to 1,000 square meters, so a little bit bigger. It is, and it's importantly of the headspace, and the landlords work with us to get that space as well. For them, it makes sense. Obviously, two
and,
more
and
people.
I can imagine the cost of building something like that is potentially less than the because you've not got the heavy equipment. Is it a
To be
cheaper
honest,
investment or is it pretty similar?
it's probably from a design perspective slightly more complex, actually,
Yeah,
because you have to build bespoke a frame. It's typically bespoke and so you have to be a bit more creative sometimes. From a cost perspective, it's very similar.
Is it?
Profitability, very similar, actually. Profitability, very, very similar. Whilst one hasn't a membership driven yet, it will be. I think that might make it more profitable than a fitness, actually. In kids longer term, I think we might see the revenue there. But, that type of business will be, weekends, it will be parties, it will be after school, it will be, so you have some dead time as well. We're going to be really focusing on how we fill the off peak space, but we have on that one 11 units open on top of the 158 you've spoken about, Russell, and we will be opening. I have about 50 territories sold there, give or take.
Wow.
And next year, I'm planning to do 20 plus, but I think we've identified 28 sites where we could launch next year just on that brand. So the combined, will be over 100 units combined.
I always said those sorts of things in England were or in Britain were a cash cow because we knew a few people that had them and they were always busy. And it was just finding the properties with the high roofs and
I,
stuff like that that you could
yeah,
put them in was the challenge.
honestly, this concept probably wouldn't work in the UK. No, the reason why is you can't make the economics work
Yeah,
because the fit out and the payment repayment period, we charge a visit, a child, equivalent to about £6 to £8. Yeah,
not bad.
which is probably affordable. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
affordable. But if you've got a family, yeah, it's not cheap. Yeah, it's still in the UK. We worked out if we can deliver that. I worked out in the UK if we're going to deliver that, be charging a parent really 13 at the cheapest to £16 per visit in the UK for the same kind of thing.
yeah.
And that's not, you're suddenly going out with a family or a couple of kids. You make it unaffordable really quickly, right?
It's a once a quarter sort of fun activity rather than
Yeah.
once a week after school,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Look, we really, that family membership, I just want to talk about that for a second. I mean, it's really important that the reason for it is we want to drive participation in those units. If we can drive participation as a family exercising together, that's a lovely transition into your next business, which will be
Absolutely.
fitness. It will be, and creating we talk about, I know you talk about UK Active, but as an industry, we don't have a governing body here like that. Um, but trying to get kids into fitness and fun and understand that really early on, and then into
You
a
only have
health
to have a
lifestyle.
look at. I mean, David Lloyd do it very well with their kids stuff and tennis, and that drives membership as they
Yeah,
get older. But golf courses, I always think, are probably the best example of it. So you'll have an adult membership, and the kids is almost I don't know, adult membership 1,500 quid a year, kids membership 5,200. And the reason they do it is almost a lost leader for them. But the reason they do it is they know if they get those kids into that activity, by the time they turn 16, 18, they're now full members. And
yeah,
they're paying all their family pay. And you've got a lifelong advocate of the sport, of the club. And golf clubs do it really well,
Mm.
and that's effectively what you're doing here, aren't you? You're sort of getting them into that feeling of exercise, but fun. So we're not pushing them into the gym environment where it sometimes can be a little bit, and you're not going to put a 3-year-old anyway into a gym environment, but you're giving them that journey, aren't you, onto the next step. And they're so used to having exercise as part of their life that actually, where do we go? Oh, let's go to the extreme gym because we're part of the extreme kids. It just makes it. I think it's a very clever model.
yeah. I think next year we see some really good results, and I think just watch that business, watch that brand with us, and yeah, I'm quietly very confident that as we start to open more units, there'll be more evidence, of course. 11's a good start, but we'll start to move. And as you know, in franchising, you tend to double year on year. So, if we've opened about 11 next year, like this year, I'd expect, I said 2022 probably plus. And then the year again, the year after, I expect us to double. So it would be probably 40 to 50 that year. So we're trying to scale the business on those kind of numbers. Ultimately though, how do you do that? Initially, it's having that foundation. You having a successful business for a number of years. You want 3 years worth of good business records, and then you really want multi-units before you start franchising if you can. Um, especially in the UK market, multi-units make a difference. Yeah, two, three, four units
Yeah.
really know the business really well. And if you've got those two, three, four units and you can prove they work, then it's a nice step into franchising. But the franchisor has to be really supportive in the beginning. Charging a big franchise fee in the beginning
Mhm.
isn't logical. Yeah, and we think it is. We think it's fast money. Sometimes franchisors do to be able to make money. It's not really what it's about. This is a marathon game. Franchising it is. You got to be in it for the.
Yeah, well, I think that's really interesting. That's really refreshing and certainly in line with the way that I think around franchising. And I know Ryan, you're the same because we've got a brand that we work with. I won't go into them, but their barrier to entry is very low. For that reason, it's growth. It's getting proof of concept. It's getting successful franchisees. It's getting the first group of people successful, and then we can grow from there, and that's already starting to pay dividends. And then, and again, obviously, Ryan, you know what I'm talking about, but another franchise who we've been speaking to, and it's straight away, no, the franchise fee needs to be this, and the franchise fee needs to be middle tens of thousands, James, without a unit in the UK. And actually, the franchise hasn't worked once previously and it's now relaunching, but we're not talking about relaunching it. We're not now working with this franchise. It's
Yeah,
it's just the conversations that we've had is just, and trying to sort of give that advice of, look, early days, let's get proof of
yeah,
concept, let's get some successful franchisees, let's get some buzz, let's get people excited about this brand because that excitement will grow the
yeah. I agree.
business. Charging people mid tens of thousands before you've got one successful unit, who's gonna do that? And our growth is going to be so slow that we're going to lose that enthusiasm. So
Yeah, it's got to be trust. It's got to be
yeah,
trust, and in the beginning, there, especially those first 10 franchisees, has to be trust. Has to be trust to be able to get the business to grow. And whilst the franchise fee, ultimately, it's not really a profit center. It's you can use it to pay, support them to get into business. You're
exactly. It's supposed to come back into
does, yeah.
the franchise business to pay for
Support
them
them
to
to
be
support them. That's
successful.
correct. Correct. That's correct. So it's not really a profit center like that. Um, but yeah, yeah, there's pros and cons to both markets. There absolutely is. I think we're very much at the start of, still at the start of where the UK was 2008 in relation to growth of market
Yeah.
opportunity. When and I can say that from experience, obviously Anytime Fitness and Russell, you're aware of that, of course, being involved yourself. And you know, but there's ways that I wouldn't I've learned that I wouldn't have done it. Obviously, I've experienced different franchisors, and when I was doing consultancy, I, managed to work in the healthcare industry, the retail industry, restaurant industry, really saw what worked. I really, really saw what the opportunity was. I saw what the acquisition costs of all franchisees would cost with different brands. So I have a really, really deep knowledge of understanding what it takes to acquire franchisees, and it's ultimately it's money. Yeah, it is a certain amount of money and a certain amount of time. Yes, you will get some organic ones in the beginning, but to scale a business, it costs money. It does. You have to be successful in that, you need direct spend. You need to be in the right areas to be able to do that. So yeah, so I wish anybody thinking about franchising will see all the success about that. Of course, um, patience is required. That's for sure. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I can well imagine. It's in terms of from a franchise side, James, because obviously you've worked with loads of different brands, different companies over the years, and obviously doing really well now. What would you say is the key things if people are looking at sort of franchising their business? What would you say two or three things that you sort of go, well, if this isn't in place,
yeah,
stick to what you're doing.
yeah. Good question. Look, the first thing is whatever the business is, that you've got proof of concept, and that is they've run that business for a period of time that financially and from a system perspective is robust enough. Yeah. And then the second thing would be really understand what is required to support a franchisee. So don't naively think that you can just franchise if you've never experienced of being in a franchise business or have some experience or spoken to consultants or spoken to other brands. You've gained some kind of experience, done a course, educated yourself, read books, followed a franchise project plan, whatever it may be. You need to read and understand the subject matter you do. Because how do you know what you're talking about if you don't have the knowledge? Yeah. So there's lots of ways to get the knowledge. It's really, really important to do that. And the third thing look, is actually franchisors are and the original franchise founders are entrepreneurs. Yeah. So you need to be an entrepreneur, and that means you're probably going to have to take some risks and be comfortable with that. If that's not your personal type of person you are, probably going to be hard for you to franchise. It is. You need to be able to understand that, all right, well, if I'm going to get into a marriage with a franchisee, that's a risk to a
Yeah.
point. It is. You need to have the right infrastructure, legal documentation, obviously around that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but work with companies to be able to do that. So, those probably are the pillars that I would say. You want entrepreneurial drive to be able to get it right. You need drive to do it. You've got to have a proven concept, and you got to have some knowledge. Those are the three pillars that I would say
Well,
are important to me.
conversely, just flipping that one, James, advice to franchisee. What's the biggest piece of advice? Because you've talked about all the industries that you've worked with there.
Yeah.
If you think about how many franchisors you've worked with, let's times that by 50 or 100, and that's how many franchisees you've probably worked with. So, what would your key piece of advice to a potential franchisee be?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, good question. Okay, so with that one, the reason I put in a panel questionnaire interview with Extreme is because I wanted to find out the people that had experience of following processes. Okay, adherence to the operational processes of a franchise or business. Understood that there's certain standards or have history of maintaining standards and the ability to understand and how to manage money. Okay. And they had the right values for the business. So those were kind of the four key areas for me. And there's more. There's probably about 10 I could probably give you, but four key areas would be really important for a franchisee. So if the franchisee, has operational discipline, has to trust the franchisor in following the processes, that's why they're successful. That's why you're going to be successful. Yeah, ultimately, have some financial awareness, has the right values, and wants to work with the franchisor. So that those would be the things that I would say a franchisee needs to recognize that they're not going to have 100% of control. That's the reality of it. The franchisor is going to steer the ship, steer the boat. Yeah. That's the reality. They're going to provide you the experience that you need. Franchisee, you get different ones. You get some that are totally against that, and you get some that are really on board with that. I can guarantee you the ones that are really on board with that are probably the most successful ones. They are. So my best piece of advice to those franchisees is you need to understand those four key areas,
If you
and
want key autonomy, you set up on your own as an independent, do you?
that's right.
That's the point. If
Yeah.
if you I think that's one big point that we see quite often, and you guys have seen over the years as well, where you get a franchisee that goes, I want to do it this way, but that's not what you bought.
Yeah.
It's not what you bought.
Uh,
So
that has to be a trust level with franchising, and it doesn't. We know there's a franchise curve. We know that at times peak excitement when they sign up, completely dissatisfied when they're probably spending money finding sites in pre-sale, and then they'll finish really at a point of, not dissatisfied or completely satisfied, but I'm kind of satisfied with my relationship with franchisors. So it
Well,
follows.
that means you must be doing a good job then, James. So I think my experience has been with a lot of franchises is that you start here, you go there, and then with a lot of them, you sort of stay along
Yeah,
down here. So if you can get them back up there again, then you must be doing a good job.
yeah. Honestly, it's probably one of the first things I spoke about in being the CEO here was how we handle franchisees, the relationships, and how we interact with them, because you know that a franchisee is going to be stressed because hey, he spent more money than he wanted to, or he's
Mm.
paying his bills, or this month his memberships hasn't gone quite well. So where's he going to be on that franchise curve? And I should have a diagram for you. I can send it to you afterwards. But um, they're going to be at the bottom. So if I'm a franchise manager or the franchisor, well, they're going to behave a certain way, aren't they? Yeah, they're going to be maybe a bit negative. They might not turn up for the call. But you see, we need to work with them to say, well, okay, we understand that you may be in this area at the moment, slightly dissatisfied with us because, it's a bit stressful. But if we can get our staff, which we're working on a lot, is understand that they're down there, is, well, isn't it our job to get them back up? Yeah, to
Mm.
work with them to get them back up, and then what you get is a better relationship. Whilst there's this curve, we've worked very hard in flattening that curve over the last 2 years here as Extreme. How do we take the pressure off the experience of the franchisee? And we've done that slightly by, well, can we communicate better at handover of site? Can we, when we audit the club or get them to audit, can we work better with each other? How do we communicate? How do we communicate with each other to get the very best results? And we have that mapped out. And I spoke at the very beginning about being franchise centric, and how we can be more franchise centric with franchisees by identifying at what stages they are at in a franchise model in your business. And you can do that. You can learn all this because I'm talking about it with
Yeah.
probably quite deep understanding and knowledge. So how did I find about it? Well, experience, and I read books, I listen to podcasts. That's exactly how I've learned.
Mm. I
And
think
to live it.
also, I think the point that I like there on the areas is one you touched on it earlier on the panel approach, which I really like. I don't think there's quite enough a lot of the time in franchising. It's just the fee is this amount, can you pay it? And then right, you're a franchisee, as opposed to are our values aligned here? And I guess it's also that, and this is anecdotal. But finding that someone who, yeah, their values align with yours and their passion and what they want to do aligns with yours. As we're speaking to a potential franchisee for a brand the other day, and he was really excited. He's an ex-military guy, and really, sort of talking about how he wants to run a gym, he wants to do this and that. Great. We're talking about investment levels and that sort of stuff. And then he was touching on return on investment, and then he suddenly said, "Yeah, but I'm also looking at a cake franchise that sounds really interesting." And I was like, "Look, whether you buy this franchise or not, look, it's here's a piece of advice from me to you is I don't think you have a passion about cakes. You're an ex-military guy who spent the last hour telling me how much you love the fitness industry. Maybe really think about doing something that's aligned with your own set of values." So, it was probably a similar thing to what you've got there. And if you've got someone in front of you going, "Great, love to run a gym. I'm thinking about making cakes at the moment," though, it's like, okay. Possibly you're not in a place to be one of our franchisees right now.
Oh, well, you never know. That's might be a very good
I,
business model. So
I tried to do cakes and gyms. Trust me, it's not a it's, pick one or the other. In fact, don't pick cakes. Don't pick
I,
cakes. Don't
I,
do that.
they've got fantastic cakes in Poland, to be honest with you. So I recommend them very much.
You can always have
Okay.
fried chicken out the back. Have your gym with a
Yeah.
fried chicken. That might work.
Well,
But
so James, I think kind of maybe we're wrapping up. Tell us just, and I think this is really interesting, and our viewers probably wouldn't know about this, about your, the fact that you relocated as well over to Poland. So what's the just kind of sort of a wrap up? What's the biggest sort of cultural differences, not business, but just in life, and what it's like to live over in Poland as opposed to the UK, and what that
Yeah,
process was like upping
yeah, yeah,
sticks over there.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, my decision to come over here was based on the opportunity, really. I was working with the founder of Xtreme Fitness. His name Lucas Doika. I was providing consultancy based on franchising and development of Xtreme, and that took probably us a lot of conversations, and I visited Poland 3 or 4 times before I decided. And I the business my decision was based on the opportunity, and that opportunity was me to look at this business in the right way. So I looked at it from a financial perspective. I spoke to franchisees, I spoke to staff. I worked with the staff on a consultancy basis. And what the cultural difference was is everybody's very passionate here, very, very passionate about what they do in all different roles. So anything from marketing to fitness advisors, and I just found that it's a real dedication to what people's careers are. I would say everybody's very well educated, much more than you realize. Speak multiple languages, and kind of I was driven by um, well, I was driven by the opportunity. It wasn't all financial. It was more about trying a bit of a different adventure. And, I live in Krakow. Krakow is a beautiful city. It is. I do get to probably eat out a bit more. It's a bit more of a cafe culture compared to the UK. Good restaurants, great food here. I don't think I've eaten one bad meal in 2 years.
Wow.
Um, Literally, it's hard to find.
Favorite dish?
Oh, in Polish, głąbki. It would be głąbki.
What's guac?
Głąbki is like a cabbage dish with meat in the middle.
What?
It's quite nice, and they have soups over there. Jurek is a nice soup. It's like a sour soup. But look, there's different cuisines. That's Polish food, of course. But of course they have Italians and good restaurants and other, but they have a lot of very much home cooked food as well, a lot of places. So on that kind of level, but food's good. Yeah, food's great. Culture's really great. Everybody's nice. There's clean. It's people are
It's
friendly,
not
more or
Brit.
less. More or less. In most situations, people want to work for the right reasons. Um, of course, there's problems in business. It happens. When you're scaling a business at this speed, yeah, you come across a few. It hasn't been completely plain sailing. It's not, and we take those on as we take those on, like in any business. It's only natural there's going to be issues as you grow at this speed. But it's controlled. It really is. It really, really is controlled. The right resources there. Um, of course, the beer's good as well, which obviously helps. So.
Well, I'd like to experience it. I keep on trying to get an invite over there,
Yeah,
but I'm still waiting on
of
those
course you
dates.
can. Of course you
Well, what we'll do, we'll end it there. That's and we'll await our invite, James. But thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your time, obviously. And we'll catch up soon. If anyone does want to, because obviously you do have UK investors. If anyone from the UK wants to have a look at the franchise, give James a shout. We'll put his details onto the front and the end of the podcast. But obviously, if anyone's watching from elsewhere and wants to understand a little bit more about Extreme, then obviously get in touch with James or his team, and they'll take you through it. It does sound a really exciting opportunity for someone, James. So maybe if they're thinking of doing it, but I'm sure the UK and whatever, maybe looking abroad is a good option.
Thank you, and obviously, pleasure catching up with you, gentlemen.
Thanks, James.
All right, thank you.